I just got out of the testing center and I passed. I passed the CSCS. Woo! Here's the scores. Right here, we got a pass. There it is. And right here, we also got a pass. What's up, YouTube? Today, I'm going to tell you how I passed the CSCS exam from the National Strength and Conditioning Association. So, if you're interested in that, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. I'm brand new to YouTube, so any kind of help would be appreciated. So first, I'm actually going to be telling you a little background about me because I think that's important to know. If you're going to listen to the study advice that I have to offer, you're going to want to understand what kind of position I started from when I studied for this exam compared to where you're starting from, because you could be starting from a totally different perspective than what I was studying from. But if you want to skip forward and get to the part where I'm just talking about basic tips, go ahead and skip forward until you see me holding the Essentials of Strength and Conditioning book, because that's where that's going to start. Alright, so I graduated in 2020 with a bachelor's degree in kinesiology. I graduated summa cum laude, and I got an outstanding GPA. For those who don't know what summa cum laude is, it's a great GPA. I don't say that to flex on anybody. It just more or less is trying to get the point across that I had a pretty good grasp on the kinesiology material that I had. I'm also going to be starting physical therapy school in the summer of 2021. And prior to taking the CSCS, I would say I had a pretty insufficient amount of coaching experience to actually be able to pass this test, according to most people. They would probably say, if they talked to me, that I didn't have enough. But I felt like I could do it just from the material that I covered in my undergrad degree. I think it covered enough about coaching to allow me to be able to pass the test. So if you are in the fitness community or you got a degree in exercise science or nutrition, you may have heard along your journey that there are many different certifications that people can get from institutions like NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine, ACE, the American Council of Exercise, or the NSCA, the National Strength and Conditioning Association, which is the governing body of the CSCS exam. I was no exception to this. I heard enough about the CSCS when I was in undergrad, and everything I heard about it was that it was the gold standard of the industry, and that it meant something. If you went on and looked at faculty profiles of the people in physical therapy, in exercise science, or physical education, often you would see the letters CSCS behind their name. They advertise that credential behind PhD, DPT, things like that. So those letters are supposed to mean something. So I went through undergrad and I graduated in the spring of 2020, and at that point I hadn't taken the GRE yet, so I still had to study and take the GRE and apply to physical therapy school. And most of my energy was still focused on that. However, because I wasn't going to be able to start physical therapy school until the summer of 2021, about a year gap, I ended up having some free time after that application process was over. And I was actually watching a video from Justin Lee over at liftforchange, and it was titled Jobs for Physical Therapy Students to Help Make Money, or How to Make Money in Physical Therapy School, I think it was. And if you haven't watched any of Justin's videos, I'm going to link his channel in the description below. He's a great guy. Awesome channel to check out if you're interested in physical therapy, exercise science, stuff like that. Anyways, after watching that video, I felt inspired to do that. Justin did a good job of selling a personal training certification as an extra tool in the toolbox for physical therapists. And I'm very entrepreneurial. I like to think with a business mind, and making a little extra cash sounded like a good idea to me. So I decided I was actually going to reach out to Justin and expand upon personal certifications in general. And he told me that he recommended the CSCS just because I already had my bachelor's degree. And once again, saying it's the gold standard of the industry and it's going to look good. So I decided I was going to do it. So if you've been on the NSCA website or just Googling things about the CSCS exam, you're probably going to learn that it's a pretty tough exam. On the NSCA website, the last I checked, the statistics of first-time pass rate for the CSCS exam is just around 63% for both sections. Yikes. That, for many people, might sound like, wow, that is not a very good pass rate, considering that you really only have to get around 70% in the exercise science portion and around 80% in the practical portion to get a passing score. That might sound like it's doable, but when you actually see that only 63% pass the test, you realize you're dealing with a beast of a test. The other thing on the NSCA website that you notice right away is that they have recommendations for study times for different populations looking to get the CSCS. And I saw for my profile a person who had an exercise science background, but someone who had subpar or no coaching experience should study 3 to 6 months to become a CSCS. And personally, I didn't have that kind of time to invest into the CSCS, and I know many people out there don't. And I didn't invest that kind of time. And I'm going to show you how I decided to invest my money into certain resources and what these resources gave me in order to pass the test, my first try. Alright, here we go. We've gotten to the point now where we're going over my top resources. If you see this book, you've made it. Okay, so the first resource is the book. The book is expensive. It's about $100. Once again, I really didn't feel like paying for this book because it's going to be something that I'm going to use to pass this test and hopefully never have to take it again. I'll be able to recertify by doing continuing education courses. And I didn't buy this book. If you can see right here, I rented it from Amazon for $20, and I highly recommend that you do that. The other thing about the book is that I recommend that you get the 4th edition of the book, not the 3rd edition, because there's plenty of updated material that the NSCA will quiz you on, will test you on, that is not in the 3rd edition. Now, a lot of sources that I've read on the CSCS recommend that you read that entire book, front to back, cover to cover, every single word, and take notes on it. To me, that was not a good idea. I just looked again just to confirm the pages. That's 650 pages in that book. And to realistically get all the material done in a decent amount of time by just reading a book and taking notes out of it, I thought there had to have been a better way. Now, you might be thinking, I'm really, ragging on this book right now. Doesn't really sound like it's a good source at all, but you're going to need the book. But there's a better way than just reading the book front to back in order to pass this test. Just to quickly go over some of the things though, before I dive into my next source, about things that I would highly recommend that you memorize and know for the exam. You're going to need to know a linear periodization model. You're going to need to know most of the numbers in the nutrition chapter and how to do math by hand, because you're not going to get a calculator on the test. You're going to need to know certain exercise technique and cues that the NSCA has. Now, as I've said, I didn't have a whole lot of coaching experience going into this test, but even if you do, I still highly recommend that you don't let your ego get in the way and think that you know everything about exercise technique, because the NSCA has some very specific cues that they're going to want you to look for when looking at exercise technique, and the book has these in them. So you're going to want to go to the exercise technique chapter and know as many of the exercises as you can know. You're also going to want to know a lot of the testing normative data. One of the things that I did as a study tip for anybody out there, when you get to the testing chapter, at the back there's going to be a bunch of tables with a bunch of numbers in them for different types of either male or female basketball players, like softball players, baseball players, all kinds of sports, and all of their normative data, such as like 1 rep maxes for bench press, squat, and power clean. I would highly advise that people at least get to know the 90th percentile, the 50th percentile, and the 10th percentile of every test in that book. It's a lot of information, but it'll pay off in the end. Okay, the second source that I recommend that you invest in is the movement system. It's by Matt Casturo. He's another fellow student physical therapist, and he is also CSCS, and he has a study course that goes over the big picture stuff in the book, chapter by chapter, in a format that I found very engaging as compared to just reading out of the book and taking notes. Matt's course is just like any other college course I've ever taken in my exercise science undergrad. And the way I would study is using Matt's material as my primary source. Matt himself recommends that you also read the book front to back. Like I said, I didn't do that. I used Matt's lectures, and I took notes on those lectures, and I memorized everything in those lectures, nearly word for word, until I could recite the information without the notebook in front of me. This was very time consuming, but I probably would say I studied about 5 hours a day, every day for 2 months to get all that done. But Matt's information that he shares in the course, I think, is the most paramount stuff that you'll have to know, as compared to if you read the book, you'll be just weeding out things and trying to decipher really what's the most important. Matt's course doesn't really have a whole lot of reviews on YouTube I haven't seen yet. I actually paid, like I said, the big money. I used my own cold hard cash and invested in him, and I had a good result from it. And then Matt's lectures also have quizzes at the end of each lecture so that you can test your knowledge and see if you learned anything from the lectures. He also has a study calendar. I used that study calendar and followed it to the doctor's orders every day. And in total, that study calendar takes about 2 months for you to finish the whole thing. Highly recommend it for somebody. If you relate to my background, I thought it was a great pace for me to stay accountable and being able to pass this test. And then just like with Justin's YouTube channel, I'm going to have Matt's channel and his link to his website with the course in the description below. Okay, and then the third resource that I recommend that you buy is going to be the NSCA official practice questions, the practice question bundle. It's not cheap by any means, but it is, in my opinion, the best representation of the exam that you're going to be taking. You might as well get the questions from the people that actually make the test. I know that might sound obvious to some people, but there are cheaper alternatives out there. I wouldn't do it because they're not the same. I've tried them. I'll talk about that more at the end. But in my opinion, go for the NSCA questions. They have a reference sheet so that when you take their questions and you finish them and you get to see how many of them you get wrong and what questions you get wrong, they have a sheet that tells you what page number in the book to look up that specific information. And that's why part of the reason why I think you should get the book is because even though you might not want to read the book, when you take the NSCA practice questions, you'll be able to see where you can go back and look at the specific things that they really want you to emphasize. Now obviously that plan's not foolproof. The NSCA could test you on anything that was in the book. However, I found the practice test to be a good representation of the exam and what it covers. That's just my opinion. I can't go into specifics on what's on the exam because that would be a violation with the NSCA. But if you can consistently stay disciplined and not try to memorize the answers once you go through that reference sheet, and you actually look up the answer content in the book and learn why that's the correct answer, you should do good. I would do that until I got 90% or greater on every one of the sections that was offered in the practice question bundle. So just to recap, my top 3 study sources are going to be the Essentials of Strength and Conditioning textbook, the Matt Castro Movement System study course, and the NSCA practice question bundle. I think these are more needs than recommendations in my opinion, if you want to get the test done in a reasonable amount of time. I want to add that caveat, because if you just, if studying out of a book is your thing, then by all means, maybe you can do it faster than I could. I just found it terribly inefficient. But I do want to add that just because it did work for me and I think it could work for you, doesn't mean that it will. We are all different people. We all like to study in different ways. Just because it worked for me might not mean it'll work for you. So I did purchase other sources other than the 3 I mentioned, but I don't think they're necessary. Ones that you'll see a lot out there are like the Pocket Prep app. I bought the Pocket Prep app and I thought the Pocket Prep app was useful just because I felt like personally I couldn't get enough questions. And the Pocket Prep app was the app that would just give you questions on the go. You wouldn't have to have the book in front of you. You wouldn't have to have a computer in front of you. You could just pull up your phone and go through questions. Some people find them incredibly easy. I also found them pretty easy in general. But if you did get something wrong, they have a reference in the description of the answer onto what page in the book they come up with that answer from. So that could be very useful to you for some people. And then the other source that I bought was Matt Castro's practice exam. I thought it was a pretty good practice exam. And again, just like with the Pocket Prep app, I mainly bought it because I couldn't get enough questions. However, it's just more, in my opinion, as an extra resource. The other thing I hear some questions about is if you don't have an exercise science degree or a health related degree, could you pass this test? And I say absolutely you could. It just might take you a little while longer. Having a background in exercise science myself and looking into the book, the text in the beginning for the scientific foundations is extremely scientifically dense. They're going to use very large, maybe intimidating words for some people if you don't have a background in it. But my advice to you would be to just look at the big picture. Look up some YouTube videos that just really, show the 10,000 foot view of the concept. You don't need to know super crazy in-depth physiology. Then finally, the last thing I want to leave you guys with is that for another good source is Facebook groups. Matt Castro has his own one, and the NSCA has their own official CSCS study group that they have on Facebook. It's got I think around like 10,000 people as of the time I'm making this video for each group. And the woman who runs the NSCA official group, Catherine Russell, she's amazing. If you ever need anything, you can reach out to her and she'll be able to help you very adequately. There's tons of people in the group. If you just ask a question, they'll be able to help you out, lead you in the right direction. Matt's another good one. You can always reach out to Matt and he'll guide you in the best way that he finds appropriate for that. So if you made it this far and you found the information in the video informative and useful, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you have any questions regarding the CSCS and the study tips to pass the test, you can totally leave them in the comments below and I'll try to get back to them as soon as I can. But that being said, if you put in the work, you can totally pass this test. Just stay disciplined, and if you put in the work, you'll find success. But thanks for watching, and good luck with your journeys.